From studios at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, this is Fourth and State. In this edition, a conversation with Congressman Ron Kind on Obamacare and his colleague, Paul Ryan. I'm Dave Haynes. I'm the editorial page editor of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and I'm joined today by Congressman Ron Kind of Western Wisconsin. Congressman, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being on Fourth and State. So one of your colleagues, Paul Ryan, is now the vice presidential candidate for president. How do you think that's changed the conversation so far?
Well, first of all, congratulations to Paul. He's been a colleague, he's been a friend. We've teamed up on some issues. Of course, we've had some serious differences of opinion on what the best policy is, but what a wonderful opportunity for him and the family and that. But that selection, it was a surprise to me, because I think Mitt Romney wanted to make this a referendum on President Obama.
Right.
He no longer has that now. This is going to be an election about choice of two very distinct and competing visions for the future of our country, what we need to do economically to get our economy on track, creating good paying jobs, and ensuring that all of our citizens are full participants of the global marketplace. And the type of public investments that we have to make to keep those doors of opportunity open. And what Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney have embraced in their budget vision, I think is a huge step backwards as far as underfunding education, job training, basic research, broadband expansion, infrastructure investment. Those are the tools I think we need to continue to invest in to ensure that we remain the most competitive and innovative nation in the world. And they don't get that done.
Let's talk about one specific element of the Ryan plan, and that is Medicare.
Right.
You were a supporter and still are a strong supporter of the Affordable Care Act, health care reform, Obamacare, if you will. Yet there are elements of the Ryan plan that in the past, premium supports, what some would call vouchers, have been supported by liberal causes, Democrats alike. What's wrong with some of the ideas in the Ryan plan?
Well, I think the fundamental difference I have with Paul, with his Medicare reform proposal, is that it's all about who assumes the risk of rising health care costs. Under his plan, it's the seniors that will assume all the risk because the adequacy of the vouchers will not help them. In fact, independent studies have shown with the detailed plan that he's offered that it would increase out-of-pocket expenses for seniors by $6,400 a year.
And that was the original plan. Now, that's not the plan. He's revised that plan, and there apparently are some changes that would maybe ameliorate that.
Yeah, but I still think it's completely inadequate, and unless and until he's willing to come out with more details on what his plan is.
And CBO hasn't scored it.
No, they haven't, not the most recent one.
Right.
But unless he does that, you're not going to have a fair apple-to-apple comparison. We have the Affordable Care Act. I believe we have to move forward on health care reform. We've got to get health information technology systems built out as quickly as possible so we can reduce medical errors, increase the efficiency of health care, and collect data so we know what works and what doesn't work, and get that information into the hands of doctors and patients alike so they can make good decisions with it. But also under the Affordable Care Act, we're going to help healthcare providers change the way healthcare is delivered so it's more integrated, coordinated, patient-centered, similar to the models of care that we enjoy here in the upper Midwest and in Wisconsin. And then ultimately, we've got to change the way we pay for health care so it's based on the outcome or value of care that's given and no longer the volume of services that are rendered.
So how do you get from there to there? In other words, from fee-for-service to a more sort of holistic look at how doctors and other providers are paid? How does the Affordable Care Act do that? Because I think there's some debate over whether it's capable of doing that, even in the ACA.
Well, the good news is we don't have to recreate the wheel here. We've got models of care that have been in existence for some time that have shown us the way of how well this can be done. And I'm talking about the Auroras and the Deans and the Marshfields, Gundersons, Mayos of the world, Theta Care here in Wisconsin too, that are more integrated and coordinated, producing some great results. The problem is they're not being compensated for the value or the outcome of care that they're doing. And this is something that I've heard repeatedly from them, that we have to change how health care is delivered so it is a more integrated fashion, and then start rewarding for good outcome of care and not just more tests, procedures, and things that don't work.
So what's an element of the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, that would promote that kind of change?
There are some different tools in it, from the accountable care organizations, the medical homes, to bundling, to readmission policy changes and reimbursement along those lines.
Hospitals might be penalized if they have too many readmissions, for example.
Yeah, you know, the fourth largest hospital expense that we have today is hospital-based infection rates. Yet under the Affordable Care Act, we're telling these providers, we're no longer going to reimburse you for preventable hospital infection rates. And since that policy went into effect, many of the providers are changing the protocols of care right now to reduce that infection rate. When they do it, we're finding that they can change it literally overnight by 40 to 50% reduction in infection rates. And for most of them, all they're doing differently is that they're cleaning their equipment more and they're washing their hands more frequently. Not a very expensive change in how healthcare is
Yet
delivered.
it can make a big difference.
Huge cost
Yeah.
savings, over $50 billion in Medicare savings alone in the next 10 years. And that was just one element of reform that will result in great cost savings.
All right, so what's wrong with the idea that's also enshrined in the Ryan plan of offering choice to seniors, where you'd have a menu of options from private plans to a Medicare plan?
Well, I think one of the problems I have with the Ryan plan is it takes away the guaranteed benefit that seniors currently enjoy in Medicare today. We have choice already in Medicare called Medicare Advantage plans. One of the reasons those plans, however, were created was because back in 2004, with Paul Ryan's support, he supported that new prescription drug bill that heavily subsidized these Medicare Advantage plans, some to the tune of 150% rate above Medicare, which I felt was way too generous. And in fact, some of the cost savings that we have now in the Affordable Care Act would claw back a lot of those huge taxpayer subsidies going to these private insurance companies. And when we did that, many Republicans, including Paul, claimed that this would force Medicare Advantage plans out of business, it would increase costs, and just the opposite has happened. Enrollment is up, costs have come down. But that prescription drug bill that Paul supported, not a nickel of it was paid for. So part of the deficit hole that we have with our budget and the rising costs in health care, you can trace back to the decisions that they made back in 2004. The largest expansion of entitlement spending, these prescription drugs for seniors, and a new Medicare Advantage, all of which was not paid for. Almost $800 billion of deficit spending. And we had to do something in order to get those costs back under control.
Well, speaking of deficits, the nation faces a fiscal cliff at the end of the year where automatic budget cuts would take place, the Bush tax cuts would go away, the payroll tax cuts that were in effect for a year or two would go away. I don't think anyone argues that all of that should happen because it would be difficult, if not very serious, for the economy. But what do you think should happen?
What we need desperately, Dave, is a long-term deficit reduction deal between Republicans and Democrats who are willing to come together with compromise and give and take. Unfortunately, compromise has become a four-letter word. We've had opportunities with the Simpson-Bowles Commission report, a budget that I supported on the House floor, just one of 38. And we're going to need that type of compromise at the end of the day, too. And that was the whole point of the whole sequestration, was for there to be a hammer hanging over the heads of Congress to get our work done and start making some difficult decisions. And the truth is, at the end of the day, everyone knows what the roadmap looks like. It's going to entail some new revenue coming in and some reforms leading to spending reductions in order to get our fiscal house put back in order.
So some have compared the sequestration to a loaded gun pointed at the hand of the Congress. Is Congress going to unload that gun?
Only time will tell. Unfortunately, this has not been the most ambitious Congress as far as getting work done, and there's a lot of uncertainty built into it. It's one of the biggest complaints I hear from businesses back home is the uncertain future, and it's holding them back. There's a lot of capital sitting on the sidelines waiting to be invested to help create jobs, to get businesses moving again, and it's not because of all the uncertainty and policy that is coming from it. So Congress needs to figure out a way to become less polarized, less hyper-partisan. It's going to be difficult at the height of an election season, I understand, but ultimately Congress, like any family, has to have the ability to compromise. It's not just my way or no way at all. Otherwise, these decisions will continue to be deferred. There will be continued paralysis with our democracy, and that's not going to help anyone.
Well, you think the dynamic is largely dependent, or in part dependent at least, on what happens in the November election?
Partly of who gets elected. The American people are the ultimate referee in all this. They can decide with their votes what type of people they want to send to deliberate on these tough issues, how willing they are to listen to other people, to work hard and search for common ground. And I know there is a lot of common ground out there. Even though I was one of 38 who supported the Simpson-Bowles budget, 18 of them were my Republican colleagues, all of whom had signed the Grover Norquist No New Tax Pledge. And in their vote, they said this is unsustainable. You cannot reach a budget deal the way some people want to.
So you've been critical of the current Congress, but you have some affection for a previous Congress, and you're a Civil War buff. Tell me about the Congress of 1862.
Yeah, I might be the lone voice who's kind of commemorating the 150th anniversary of the 37th Congress that met for 6 weeks during the summer of 1862. It was the first full year of the American Civil War. The North was getting beat, and beat badly on the Civil War battlefields. There was great doubt whether our republic would survive, let alone what it would look like in future years. But even during that time of great economic peril and military uncertainty, President Lincoln ordered the architect of the Capitol to keep building the dome for the symbolic value that it held for our nation. But that Congress met for 6 weeks, and during that short period they passed the Morrill Act, which established the land-grant or public university system that we have in our country today. They passed the Pacific Railroad Act, which established the first transcontinental transportation and communication system for our country. They passed the Homestead Act, which opened up free land in the West for settlers and for those who wanted to help settle our nation. They also authorized the creation for the first time the National Academy of Sciences, which still meets today, producing great research and policy recommendations. And they also passed the very first ever personal income tax to help finance the war effort so we wouldn't drive ourselves into debt and bankrupt our nation. All of it was done during a time of economic peril and military uncertainty.
All Republicans.
Yeah, it was a Republican president and a Republican Congress who did it, who also felt that there was an important need to continue making public investments for the future success and the opportunity for our nation. And that legacy we still feel today. So to me, I derive a lesson that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Yes, we're facing tough economic times, a budget shortfall, difficult decisions have to be made, but in the midst of this, we've got to be smart in doing it. And there are some important public investments that we should still be willing to make in order to keep the United States the most innovative and creative nation in the world.
Congressman Ron Kine, thanks for joining us on 4th and State.